Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I am the Sovereign, and this is my court. If this is your first time in attendance, please consider hitting the subscribe button before you leave our kingdom. Court council. Let's do a court council. It's going to be fun because there's a lot of stuff going down on Twitter, and I've been meaning to get to this one too. Have you heard of this? Sydney Watson, a conservative YouTuber, took a plane flight, and oh Lord, she was not happy. Now, I'm going to say this right now. I do not know Sydney Watson. I do not know her political stance or beliefs or her channel. I don't know much about her. I'm sure that there are some things that her and I disagree upon. However, this is not going to bias my thoughts and opinions on this subject or what she felt was a wrong situation when she took this plane flight. So if you haven't been keeping up with Twitter, you want to know the situation. Sydney Watson, as I said, conservative YouTuber, so a lot of people already don't like her, was taking some backlash and heat in the public eye because she was on a plane flight. Can't remember to where, does it really matter? Not really. She was on a plane flight, American Airlines, and she was wedged between two, what she says, obese passengers were next to her. She had the middle seat, and there was an obese passenger in the aisle seat and the window seat, and she was booked in the middle. And according to her, because I remember reading through some of her tweets and her explanations and everything, this was a work flight. There was no other way. This was a flight that she had no choice but to take. The rest of them were were already booked, or she couldn't switch, or it was just not possible. She had no choice but to take this flight. So the airline booked her between two obese passengers. And according to Sydney, in fact, I'll read Sydney's tweet because I have it right here. Sydney says, "I'm currently literally wedged between two obese people on my flight. This is absolutely not acceptable or okay. If fat people want to be fat, fine. But it's something else entirely when I'm stuck between you and your arm rolls on my body for 3 hours." She was tweeting throughout the entire plane flight, and she had people talking away. Twitter was popping away. I am aware that Sydney Watson has spoken about the body positivity, fat activist type of thing, those communities. I know that she's spoken about this before, so she has a history with those communities. A lot of people thought that she was fat shaming the other passengers, and they're like, how could you fat shame them? You're being so mean. Like, you don't have to fat shame them. So I know everybody's like, okay, what is your honest take on this? We're going to talk through this because I think everybody needs a little bit of a rain check. Though I haven't spoken about it on my channel, we will talk about it. I follow the body positivity movement constantly. Like, that is a community that I have been keeping an eye on because they're freaking fascinating. Okay, the body positivity, the fat at every size movement, the healthy at every size movement, which I'm telling you right now, for those of you who have the question, you cannot be healthy at every size. I do believe in body positivity, no matter what size, shape your body is. Even if you are unhealthy, you should be positive about your body. It does not mean you should accept it, does not mean that it's not a problem, but I never believe in hating yourself when you have, even if somebody has cancer, right? A cancer patient, even though their body is causing them problems, I'm not going to advocate for them to hate their bodies, but I'm not going to advocate for them to accept the cancer either. So though I believe in body positivity, I do not believe in health at every size because that's impossible, ridiculous. We're not going to say a grown woman who's 65 pounds is healthy the same way we're not going to say a 600-pound person is healthy. Don't come at me with that. You're not even playing in the land of logic at that point. I'm laying down the history of her, Sydney Watson, with the body positivity fat activist movement because you need to understand why she's using these words. She's saying obese because that is the medical terminology, and she's saying obese because she wants people to understand that these are not slightly overweight passengers. These are legitimately medically obese people who are causing her discomfort. So in her descriptions of these people, I don't think that there was another accurate way of her describing them without sacrificing the true context of the situation. She wanted people to understand the true situation she was in. These are not slender. These are not even slightly overweight people. These are legitimately obese people. And I know some people are going to be like, well, she didn't need to vent it all over Twitter. People have to understand that I understand that you are sensitive to the plights of others, but Sydney is also in a situation here, and I know people don't like her. And because people don't like her, they're not willing to actually see the situation from an unbiased perspective. Anybody is allowed to vocalize their frustrations with a situation that they are in. Technically, that's what Twitter is for, to be honest. That's what it's for. And she went through the lengths of keeping these passengers' names private, didn't show any faces, none of that, but she was truly uncomfortable. And I'm probably going to have to take some heat with this, but I'm going to have to say it is not an issue for Sydney to vocalize that she is uncomfortable with the situation in which she was placed. These two obese passengers, overweight passengers, were physically coming into her personal space. She did an entire video on this explaining the situation, telling people like, yo, this is not me being mean. Like, it sounds mean, but I wasn't being mean. She was to a point where she couldn't eat normally. Like, she couldn't physically eat her airplane food the way she should have been because these people were encroaching into her space. She couldn't put the arm rest down on her seat because these people were physically encroaching into her space. And I understand empathy and I understand being understanding. I get all that. What I don't understand is why people preach about being understanding while discounting the discomfort of somebody else. Everybody's willing to completely wave away Sydney's discomfort in favor of these passengers who were not only against the policy of American Airlines, but were truly causing her discomfort. Look, if you're to the point where you can't put your armrest down on an airplane for your seat, you have been caused some sort of discomfort. Understand that Sydney paid for this space on the plane, right? She purchased a certain bubble where she could be and relax and take this flight. She paid for that. And I'm going to say a good portion of her seat was robbed on both sides by these two passengers who were together. This is what I think a lot of people overlooked in this situation. The passengers knew each other. They booked a flight together. I do believe they were brother and sister, and there was a third passenger with them. There was like a little family thing happening. What you may or may not realize, I'm going to assume you don't realize, is that this is a tactic used on airlines, especially when people are traveling together or in groups or something, is to book the aisle seat and the window seat and leave the middle section open in hopes that the airline will not place a passenger there because it's uncomfortable. And, that's like the last place anybody wants to be. So they're banking on the airline not putting another person in that seat, which creates extra room for those other two passengers. This is an actual strategy that people use on airlines. I recognized this as soon as I saw it. I'm like, well, they were banking on having extra room and they knew they were going to be uncomfortable next to each other. So they wanted to have that whole row to themselves and they thought that they would. Sydney asked the third passenger in this group to switch places with her because she felt like the family member obviously would be more comfortable being this close to these people than me who they don't know. She's trying to find a way out of the situation. And even their own family member was like, nah, I don't want to sit with them. So Sydney was stuck, in a situation where even the person in front of her was like leaning back his chair, which he has the right to do. But she was just stuck in the worst uncomfortable situation possible and vocalizing her frustrations. And then everybody went off on her talking about she's fat shaming, discounting the fact that, number one, she paid for this place and her space on this plane. Number two, it's against the policy of the airlines to allow this to happen. When you go on an airline, if you are encroaching onto a passenger seat, they, according to the airline, mandate that you buy 2 seats. This is a rule in American Airlines, and not just American Airlines. Every major airline has this rule. If you are too large to fit into 1 seat, you must purchase 2. And it was not lost on me that these passengers were aware of their size because they purposely did the strategy of booking the aisle seat and the window seat and leaving that middle seat blank so that they would have extra room. They were well aware of their size and how uncomfortable a person would be between them, and they were banking on that seat being left open. Or, this is the other thing, they're banking on that seat being left open or whoever was placed there asking to be moved because they knew no one's going to want to sit there. No one's going to want to be stuck between 2 people they have to physically touch. Like, I'm a nice person. I'm a hugger. I will be happy and hug people. Do not put me on a flight for hours at a time touching 2 strangers. Like, I don't care. It's no. It's a no for me. All right. That's not me being mean. That's not me shaming. Get out my space. I don't know you. It would be weird of me to have I don't know these people's names and I got to touch you the whole time. Yeah. No. This is coming from someone who lives by cuddle law. Like, I love cuddles. Cuddles sustain me more than food does. And I can't fathom the thought of it. It's really difficult for me to have any sort of sympathy for the passengers who weren't inconvenienced in any way, by the way. So I don't understand why everybody's howling about the passengers. And when this woman couldn't so much as like sit back in her own seat and be comfortable, and everybody's like, be empathetic and, be empathy. I don't care what size anyone chooses to be. Truly, I don't. I really don't. I don't care if you want to eat yourself to death. If that is the death you want to have, as death by tacos, there are worse ways to go. Have at it. Okay? I'm not about to bash you. I'm not going to say anything. As far as I'm concerned, might be a good choice. Hell, if you got to choose a way to go, tacos ain't bad. But that is a choice that you have made. You've made that. You have decided to live a specific type of life that is unorthodox to the rest of society. You have the right to do that, but the people around you do not have to be inconvenienced by your personal life choices. And I have told people that before. I don't care what you choose to do in your life at all, ever. I don't. I couldn't care less. I couldn't really at all. But the moment your life decisions impact the public or other people, then it becomes our business. Then that's when we get to vocalize our problems with it. Because however large you choose to be, don't care. You don't get to inconvenience me. And nobody wanted to look at Sydney's situation and even take empathy on her of even what she was going through. There's no thought in the world of Sydney's well-being. Once again, I think it's because people just don't like her. But I'm like, I don't know anything about her and I don't really care. The situation is unfair. Picture this. I did a vlog 2 years ago when I went to Washington, D.C. during the whole George Floyd thing. Trump was in office. The military was there. Like, I slept on the sidewalk in front of the White House under the scope of sniper rifles for days. I was protesting for days. I walked for miles. I didn't have a car. I didn't have friends. I went there alone. I was lost. I was cold. I got rained on multiple times. I took up shelter in the Lincoln Memorial with the military. I lived like a homeless person of my own choice. Absolutely. I did it for a purpose. And the purpose was just that I was so outraged and hurt by everything that was going on in my country. When Trump called in the military to damn near fight the American people, I was like, you know what? I'm done with this. I was so stressed. I felt like that was the only way to get it out of my body. I was mentally and emotionally just troubled and exhausted and pained and hurting. And I still have a scar on my hand to this day because while I was out there, I have a bulletproof skateboard. Super cool. I shit you not, bulletproof skateboard. It's awesome. And it's see-through. And all the undercover cops and military people, they loved it. But I was skateboarding around DC and I was going down a pebble path of the Lincoln Memorial and I fell off my skateboard because I didn't realize that there was a barrier at the end of the road, so there was no way for me to stop. And I was going downhill really fast, so I had to bail off of my skateboard into the grass and my hand scraped. So I was missing a big chunk of my hand that I had bandaged up. So by the time it was time for me to leave DC, I was in Colorado on an 8-hour layover, and it was freezing in the airport, and I was sleeping on the ground, and I had this person on my Instagram who was bugging me the whole time, and I couldn't get any sleep, and I was freezing to death, and I was cold, and I was tired, and I was wet, and I hadn't showered, and I stayed in like a hostel 1 out of the 7 days I was there, and I was emotionally a wreck. Like, I was going through it, you guys. You can go back and watch the vlogs. I was going through it. I wanted to just cry. I needed a hug. I was just mentally just gone. I don't know. I don't know how I made it home. Like, it was not good for me. That 8-hour layover was so painful, like truly painful. My body ached from the amount of time I spent walking. I had holes in my shoes, my scars on my feet. Like, it was really bad. So I'm thinking of myself. If I were to have gotten onto my plane flight and been sat and next to these two obese people where I couldn't so much as lay my head back to rest for the few hours that I was on my way back to California. I couldn't so much as just have a nibble of food because these two people thought that they were going to have this middle seat to themselves and they didn't want to switch seats. They didn't want to allow me to sit somewhere else. There was no other space on the plane. I was just stuck here. I probably would have cried. I was so raw and emotional and hurt and troubled and sore and hungry and cold. And I probably would have I just probably would have broke down right then because it was that would have been the straw that broke the camel's back for me. So when I hear people, they're like, oh, we need to be more empathetic to other people and other people's plights. You guys, whatever you're like, these people chose to live the life they want to live. And some people are going to be like medical conditions and all medical conditions and whatnot. You are not allowed to prioritize yourself over another person's welfare. Sydney matters as much in this situation as these other two passengers do. That is my point. People are acting like Sydney doesn't matter. They don't care what type of sleep Sydney had before, what she's going through, how she's feeling. No one gives a crap about Sydney. They only care about these two passengers. And that's where I was like, that's not fair. Because I put myself in her position. I would have had a problem with it too. And I would have had every right to have a problem with it. Like, why is no one thinking about how I feel? I'm tired. I'm stressed. I'm a mess. I need my space right now. This would have been a problem for me. And this is something that I've seen in the body positivity, fat activists, whatever movements that I've seen, is that they, for whatever reason, always prioritize themselves over everybody else. This is a small group. This is like, yeah, Americans are larger than most countries, but the obese people of America or the world is a very small minority of the planet and population and country and nation and all that. A small amount of people, but they demand so much and demand to be put miles and leagues above the rest of the public because of what they want. I've seen people whine about, oh, towels are too small for me. You know, this is a part of, you know, body shaming and, you know, people not accepting fat people. And it's like, no. Hotels and standard towels are meant to clothe and help standard size people. It's fine if you've chosen to live a life that is not standard, that is outside of the norm. That's fine. But everybody else did not. And these businesses are going to cater to the majority, not the minority of people who are around. Not to say you don't matter, but that's how business works. That is how it works. And I'm really happy to see a lot of people on Twitter have kind of vocalized the same sentiment of, okay, like, I get that this is a situation, but Sydney's feelings matter. A lot of people on Twitter have come out and say, they're like, these two people should have been forced to buy 2 seats if this was an issue. Like, Sydney shouldn't have to be forced in this situation where can't sit back in her seat. She has to lean her head forward onto a different seat to rest. She can't eat her food. She's got people on her. Like, this is not Sydney's fault. It's not on her. And she has every right to vocalize how she was feeling. American Airlines' response to this, which they did respond, they're basically like, sorry you had a bad time. Here's a gift card, but there's not much we can do. And it's like, American Airlines has a policy for stuff like this, and they should have enforced it because situations, the reason they have these policies is to avoid these situations, right? You don't want passengers fighting each other, being uncomfortable, doing all this stuff on your airplane. So you have to kind of prevent that by following your own freaking rules. If another passenger is going to make somebody else be uncomfortable, it is the first passenger's duty to secure themselves in a way that they are not inconveniencing their neighbor. I hold the same policy when it comes to almost anything, okay? And I've been trying to figure out a way to like have a conversation about this, okay? Look, y'all, we're talking about like obese people on airplanes. Like, as long as you don't inconvenience somebody, I have no problem with anybody's weight. I don't care. If you need to buy 2 seats, buy 2 seats, but you're not allowed to inconvenience somebody. If you want to eat whatever you want, I'm not invested in other people's lives. I don't care. I hold the same policy when it comes to kids on planes, okay? And this is coming from someone who likes kids. I like kids. I'm great with kids. I will babysit for free. I love kids. But this.
That ear-piercing scream is an unruly child on a transatlantic flight to New York. The passengers describe an 8-hour flight from hell with non-stop and nerve-jangling screaming and fussing. They even covered their ears to drown out the 3-year-old.
She kind of looked like she was used to it. He was climbing all over the chairs. He was just screaming, would not let up. He was running up and down the aisles. There was nothing she could do.
Before the plane even took off from Germany, the child's mother could be heard asking a flight attendant to turn on the Wi-Fi so the child could be appeased with an iPad. She was also heard pleading, "Calm down, honey."
Everybody was just kind of looking at each other like, oh, this is going to be a long flight.
I will read the comment section on something like this, and people are like, well, maybe the child's sleepy. Maybe the child had special needs. Maybe the child is this. Maybe the child's angry. Maybe blah, 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 blah. I'm going to tell you right now. I'm sorry. It sounds I'm not empathetic or whatever. We're going to work through this, okay? But I'm letting you know right now. I don't care. I don't care. I do not care. It is not the job of the public to secure your comfort. okay? A public space is a space reserved for all people, and it should be shared equally. There's not one person that can come into a public space and demand more of that space because of any reason. Everybody is to be taken account of in these situations. So I see a lot of people, they're like, oh, well, people need to be more understanding on parents on planes. And it's like, no, you need to be a better parent. I am sorry that I have to tell some people this, you're not gonna like to hear it. You have to be a better parent and take into account the comfort of your own child. If this child is not prepared to be on a plane, if this child does not like being on a plane, if this child is not settled, if you're not prepared for whatever reason, this is something that a family has to deal with and cannot be put on the public. And I'm saying this because not everybody wants to deal with your kid. And this is coming from someone who likes kids. There's some people in the world who don't like kids. Don't like kids. Why is it your right to force other people who don't want to be in your situation to deal with what you have chosen? To me, that is not fair. And I'm all about being fair. I understand the comfort of a parent and families and children and all that, but I never negate the comfort of other people. There are other people on planes that are going through something. There's somebody on the plane who hasn't slept in 36 hours. There's somebody on the plane who's going through a divorce. There's somebody on the plane whose mother just died. And you're not thinking about that because you're so tunnel vision focused on your own issues and your own problems that you're not considering the inconvenience that you're causing to other people when those people's feelings matter. They do. So whenever situations like this happen, I always tell people, whoever is inconveniencing another person, it's your job to deal with it. It doesn't, even if it's a medical condition, airlines have ways of dealing with certain medical conditions to where all passengers are taken into account carefully. If it's a family matter, then you need to secure your family in a way where you're not inconveniencing other people, because that's what it means to truly be empathetic. Truly being empathetic is being understanding of the people and worlds around you. Just because you may not be able to see somebody else's illness or struggles doesn't mean they don't have one. And there should not be this expectation on the surrounding public to bear your personal burdens. If you have chosen to be obese, if you have chosen to live a certain life that is outside of the standard normal, whatever, power to you, do what you do. I'm not a normal person either. Luckily for me, I just happen to have chosen a life where I can fit in an airplane seat right now. We all have our different struggles and whatnot, but we have to learn to handle them in a way that we don't inconvenience the public. Yes, people are going to be empathetic, but empathetic to a point. People are going to be empathetic when they can. It's not always possible for people to go out of their way for someone. It's not always possible for people to just do the great thing or the good thing. That's like seeing a homeless person walk across the street from another homeless person and chastise the first homeless person for not giving the second homeless person food, shelter, and some money. Like, you're saying this person should be empathetic, but they're in the same boat. You just can't tell. Like, people just need to think a little bit deeper. So in this situation, right, the body positivity fat activist movement, them going after Sydney Watson was silly, because nothing at this point was on Sydney. It wasn't. She has every right to vocalize her frustrations. Me, in her situation, I probably would have. In fact, when I was in the airport and I was being bullied and being harassed on my Instagram by some BS sponsor or somebody trying to force me to pay them money to advertise my YouTube channel as if I needed them, I made an entire YouTube video shading them and I did a whole story time shading them, put his whole face out there because he bugged me so much. So I cannot get on Sydney Watson for behaving the way that she did, because I went 2 steps further and made a whole video about the person that inconvenienced me, and they weren't even in my face in person. So I can empathize with Sydney and say I probably would have had a breakdown in that situation too. Like I said, it's not to shame anyone who's obese. I'm just saying take care of your needs. You cannot throw your personal issues on others and expect them to just be okay with it, right? Like, I'm not about to just be okay with it. You also can't expect people to not be petty. Like, when you inconveniencing somebody for multiple hours, like the little pettiness comes out. And throughout Sydney's video, which I will link, like if you want to go hear Sydney talk about the situation, I'll link it. Sydney does talk about it, but the flight attendant kept trying to like do anything to help her feel more comfortable. Like, do you want anything? Do you want something? Like, everybody could see this was a bad situation for her. So I'm not mad at her for venting, because I totally have vented and it's on YouTube. I think everybody just needs to take a little bit of personal responsibility and account for their own choices so that we don't have to run into things like this. It didn't need to be blown this far out of proportion. In the comment section below, let me know what you think about this situation with people shaming Sydney Watson for being vocal about her discomfort being sandwiched between two obese people. And even the obese people did not want to switch places with her. Even the passenger flying with the obese people who was in a different seat didn't want to switch seats with her. Like, no one was trying to help this girl, so she vocalized it on Twitter. Do you think she was being mean? Or what are your thoughts on this subject? What are your thoughts on the body positivity, fat activist, fat acceptance movement? I've been watching it. I think a lot of it's silly. I'm gonna be totally honest. Body positivity, not silly. Be positive about your body no matter what the size, okay? No matter what your illness may be positive about your body and still try to be healthy. Health at every size movement. You're living in La La Land. Get a science book. We're not going to do this. We're not. But put your comments in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about the subject. Send me some videos. You know what? Because I've been wanting to kind of talk about the body positivity, fat activist movement, because there's certain things that are just gotten so silly that I'm like, I kind of want to talk about this because good Lord, what's going on here? But put your comments down there. Let me know your thoughts. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button so you can come and chit chat once again. And remember, I love you and I will miss you, but you know I will be back in a future video.